I never thought sharing an apartment with Marcus would change everything about how I saw myself. But here I am, 3 months later, questioning every assumption I'd made about friendship, attraction, and the careful walls we build around our hearts. It started innocently enough. Marcus had responded to my Craigslist ad for a roommate with a straightforward email that included references, a credit score, and a promise that he was clean, quiet, and respectful. What he hadn't mentioned was that he looked like he'd stepped out of a fitness magazine, with dark hair that always seemed perfectly tousled and green eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He also hadn't mentioned that our building's heating system was older than both of us combined and had a tendency to fail at the worst possible moments. The first time it happened, I woke up to the sound of chattering teeth coming from the living room. It was mid-December, and Chicago was in the grip of one of those brutal cold snaps that made you question why humans ever thought settling in the Midwest was a good idea. I'd been cocooned in my thick comforter, warm enough in my bedroom. But Marcus had fallen asleep on the couch while watching some late-night documentary about ocean predators. If this story hits you, drop a heart in the comments. I found him curled up in a tight ball, wearing nothing but boxers and a thin t-shirt, his lips actually blue from the cold. The space heater we kept in the living room had apparently given up sometime during the night, and the main heating system was making those ominous clicking sounds that meant it was trying but failing to do its job. "Marcus," I whispered, shaking his shoulder gently. "Hey man, you're freezing." He opened his eyes slowly, and I could see him struggling to focus. "Jake? What time is it?" "Almost 3. Come on. You need to warm up before you get hypothermia or something." I helped him to his feet, noting how his whole body was shaking. His skin felt like ice when I touched his arm, and something protective and instinctive kicked in. Without really thinking about it, I guided him toward my bedroom. "My room's warmer," I explained, though I wasn't sure if that was entirely true or if I was just making excuses for wanting him close. "You can crash in my bed until the heat comes back on." Marcus didn't argue, which told me how cold he really was. He stumbled into my room and immediately dove under my covers, still shivering violently. I hesitated for a moment, standing there in my pajama pants and wondering what the appropriate roommate protocol was in this situation. But then Marcus looked up at me with those green eyes, and there was something vulnerable there that made my chest tight. "Jake, I can't stop shaking," he said, and his voice had a quality I'd never heard before, almost childlike in its honesty. I climbed into bed beside him, telling myself this was just what any good friend would do. Body heat was the most efficient way to warm someone up, right? That's what they always said in survival shows. But the moment I felt his cold skin against mine, I knew I was lying to myself about my motivations. Marcus immediately pressed closer to me, seeking warmth, and I tried to ignore the way my heart started racing. He was straight, I reminded myself. He'd had a girlfriend named Sarah when he first moved in, though they'd broken up about a month ago. He talked about women the way straight guys do, with that casual appreciation that never seemed forced or performative. And here I was, reading into a moment of basic human need and survival. But as Marcus's shivering gradually subsided and his breathing evened out, he didn't move away. Instead, he seemed to relax into me, one arm draping across my chest, his face tucked against my shoulder. I lay there in the dark, hyper-aware of every point where our bodies touched, trying to convince myself that the warmth spreading through me was just body heat and nothing more. When I woke up the next morning, Marcus was still there, still pressed against me, but now he was warm and soft with sleep. His hair was messy, and there was a crease on his cheek from my pillow, and something about seeing him like that, unguarded and peaceful, made my chest ache in a way I wasn't ready to examine. He stirred when I tried to carefully extract myself from his embrace, blinking up at me with confusion that quickly shifted to what looked like embarrassment. "Oh shit, sorry," he mumbled, immediately rolling away. "I didn't mean to. I was just so cold last night." "It's fine," I said quickly, though my voice came out rougher than I intended. "Really, I'm glad you didn't freeze to death on our couch." Marcus sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Thanks, man. Seriously, I owe you one." He padded back to his own room to get ready for work, and I tried to pretend that everything was normal, that I hadn't spent the last few minutes of sleep breathing in the scent of his shampoo and memorizing the weight of his arm across my ribs. The heating got fixed that afternoon, but something had shifted between us. Marcus seemed more comfortable around me, more tactile in small ways. He'd bump my shoulder when we passed in the kitchen, or ruffle my hair when I said something he found funny. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that some people were just naturally more physical once they felt comfortable with someone. But then the heating broke again 2 weeks later. This time, Marcus didn't even try to tough it out on the couch. Around midnight, I heard a soft knock on my bedroom door. "Jake? The heat's out again, and it's fucking Arctic in my room." I opened the door to find him standing there in flannel pajama pants and a hoodie, looking sheepish but hopeful. "Come on," I said, stepping aside to let him in. This time, there was less urgency, less survival instinct driving our actions. Marcus climbed into my bed like it was the most natural thing in the world, and when I joined him, he immediately curled up against my side. "Is this weird?" he asked quietly, his breath warm against my neck. "No," I lied, because the truth was too complicated and dangerous to voice. "We're just staying warm." But as we lay there in the dark, Marcus's body relaxed and pliant against mine. I couldn't ignore the way my pulse quickened every time he shifted closer. His hand was resting on my chest, right over my heart, and I wondered if he could feel how fast it was beating. "Jake." Marcus's voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Yeah. Thanks for not making this weird." I almost laughed at the irony, because everything about this felt weird to me, but not in a bad way. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that one wrong step would send me tumbling into something I couldn't take back. "Of course not," I managed. "What are roommates for?" Marcus made a small sound that might have been agreement, and then his breathing deepened as he drifted off to sleep. I lay awake for another hour, acutely aware of every rise and fall of his chest, every small movement he made in his sleep. The pattern continued over the next month. Every time the temperature dropped below a certain point, which in Chicago winter was often, Marcus would end up in my bed. He never asked directly. He'd just appear at my door with some excuse about his room being too cold, or the space heater not working properly, or the wind rattling his windows too much to sleep. I never questioned it, never suggested he get a better heater or more blankets. I just made room for him in my bed and tried to ignore the growing ache in my chest every time he pressed close to me in the dark. It was during one of these nights that everything changed. We'd been lying there for maybe an hour, both of us still awake but pretending to sleep. Marcus was on his side facing me, one arm tucked under his pillow, the other resting on the small space of mattress between us. I was on my back, staring at the ceiling and trying to focus on anything other than the warmth radiating from his body. "Jake," Marcus whispered, so quietly I almost thought I'd imagined it. Can I ask you something?" My heart started racing, but I kept my voice steady. "Sure. Have you ever?" He paused, and I could feel him shifting beside me. "Have you ever wanted something you knew you couldn't have?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with implications I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I turned my head to look at him, and even in the dim light filtering through my curtains, I could see that his eyes were open, watching me. "Yeah," I said finally, because it was the truth, and because something in his voice made it impossible to lie. "I think everyone has." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically hear him thinking, weighing his words. "What if it was something that could change everything?" he asked. "Something that could ruin what you already have." I felt like I was walking through a minefield, each word potentially explosive. "I guess it would depend on whether what you could have was worth the risk of losing what you already have." Marcus shifted closer, and suddenly his face was only inches from mine. I could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, could count his eyelashes if I wanted to. "What if you weren't sure?" he whispered. "What if you'd never wanted something like that before, and it scared the hell out of you?" My mouth went dry. We weren't talking about abstract concepts anymore, and we both knew it. This was dangerous territory, the kind of conversation that could explode our careful friendship and leave nothing but awkwardness and avoidance in its wake. "Then I guess you'd have to decide if being scared was worse than spending the rest of your life wondering what if," I said, my voice barely audible. Marcus's eyes searched my face, and I saw the exact moment when something shifted, when the careful distance we'd been maintaining crumbled. His hand moved from the mattress to my chest, palm flat against my t-shirt, and I could feel my heart hammering against his touch. "Jake," he breathed, and there was something desperate in the way he said my name. "Yeah. I think I'm in trouble." Before I could ask what he meant, Marcus leaned forward and kissed me. It was soft and tentative at first, barely more than a brush of lips. But when I didn't pull away, when I actually kissed him back, he deepened it. His hand fisted in my shirt, pulling me closer, and I could taste the uncertainty and want on his lips. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against mine. "Fuck," he whispered. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks." "Weeks?" I asked, because my brain was still trying to catch up with what had just happened. "Since that first night," Marcus admitted. "When I woke up next to you, and you looked at me like I was something precious. No one's ever looked at me like that before." I reached up to cup his face, thumb brushing across his cheekbone. "Marcus, you need to know, I'm gay," he finished. "I know. I figured it out pretty quickly. The way you never talked about dating anyone, never brought anyone home. And the way you looked at me sometimes, when you thought I wasn't paying attention. And that doesn't bother you?" Marcus laughed, but it was shaky. "It should, shouldn't it? I've never been attracted to a guy before. I've never even thought about it. But with you," he shook his head, "I can't stop thinking about you. About this. About what it would be like to stop pretending that I'm only in your bed because I'm cold." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe I'm not as straight as I thought I was," Marcus said, his voice gaining strength. "I'm saying that I've been lying to myself about why I keep ending up in your bed. And I'm saying that I'm terrified because I don't know what this means or where it goes, but I can't keep pretending anymore." I kissed him again, slower this time, trying to pour all the weeks of longing and confusion and hope into the connection between us. Marcus responded immediately, his body pressing closer to mine, and I could feel some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "We don't have to figure it all out tonight," I murmured against his lips. "We can take this as slow as you need." "What if I don't want to go slow?" Marcus asked, and there was a heat in his voice that made my stomach flip. "What if I've been thinking about this so much that slow feels impossible?" "Then we don't go slow," I said, surprised by my own boldness. "We do whatever feels right." Marcus pulled back to look at me, and I could see the mix of desire and nervousness in his expression. "I don't know what I'm doing, Jake. I've never been with a guy before." "Neither have I admitted, which made him blink in surprise. Really? I mean, I've known I was gay for years, but I've never actually. I've been too scared, I guess. Too worried about getting hurt or being rejected." Marcus's expression softened. "So we're both figuring this out as we go." "Looks like it." He kissed me again, and this time there was less hesitation, more certainty. His hands found the hem of my t-shirt, fingers skimming across the skin of my stomach, and I shivered at the contact. "Is this okay?" he asked, and I nodded, not trusting my voice. We moved slowly, carefully, mapping each other's bodies with gentle touches and soft kisses. Marcus was patient and curious, asking quiet questions and paying attention to my responses. When I touched him, he made these small sounds of surprise and pleasure that went straight to my head. "God, Jake," he breathed at one point, his voice rough with want. "Why does this feel so right?" I didn't have an answer for him, but I didn't think he needed one. Sometimes things just fit, even when they shouldn't, even when they challenge everything you thought you knew about yourself. Afterward, we lay tangled together, both of us quiet and processing. Marcus traced patterns on my chest with his fingertip, and I played with his hair, marveling at how soft it was. "So," Marcus said eventually, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I guess the heat's not really broken, is it?" I laughed, the sound surprising me. "It's been working fine for 2 weeks." "I know." Marcus lifted his head to look at me. "I've been turning it off." "You've been sabotaging our heating?" "I've been creating opportunities," Marcus corrected, looking slightly embarrassed but unrepentant. "I couldn't figure out how else to get close to you without making it weird. So instead you made me think we had the world's most unreliable heating system. It worked, didn't it?" I pulled him up for another kiss, marveling at how natural it felt. "How right?" "It worked." Marcus settled back against my chest, and I could feel him relaxing into sleep. But just as his breathing started to even out, he spoke again. "Jake." I'm still scared," he admitted quietly. "About what this means, about what people will think, about whether I'm brave enough to figure out who I am now." I tightened my arms around him. "That's okay. We'll figure it out together. Promise. Promise." The next morning was different from all the others. Marcus didn't bolt from my bed or act embarrassed about what had happened. Instead, he woke up slowly, stretching like a cat before turning to face me with a sleepy smile. "Morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. Morning, I replied, reaching out to smooth down his bedhead. How are you feeling? Marcus considered the question seriously. Good, he said finally. Really good. A little overwhelmed, but good. No regrets. None, he said firmly. You? None, I echoed, and meant it. We made breakfast together, moving around each other in the kitchen with an easy intimacy that felt both new and familiar. Marcus kept finding excuses to touch me, a hand on my back as he reached around me for the coffee, fingers brushing mine as he handed me a plate. It was like he was testing the boundaries of this new dynamic, seeing what was allowed now. So, Marcus said as we sat down to eat, what happens now? It was the question I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. What do you want to happen? Marcus was quiet for a moment, poking at his eggs. I want to see where this goes, he said finally. I want to figure out what it means to be attracted to you, to want to be with you. But I also want to take it one day at a time, if that's okay. More than okay, I assured him. We don't have to put labels on anything or make grand declarations. We can just be. Just be, Marcus repeated, like he was testing the words. I like that. The following weeks were a careful dance of discovery. Marcus was curious about everything, what it meant to be attracted to men, how relationships between men worked, what he wanted from this thing we were building together. He asked questions constantly, some practical, some philosophical, all of them endearing in their earnestness. Do you think I'm bisexual now? He asked one evening as we watched a movie, his head in my lap. I think you're Marcus, I said, running my fingers through his hair. And Marcus is attracted to me. Everything else is just labels. But labels matter, don't they? For understanding yourself. They can, I agreed. But they can also be limiting. You don't have to figure out your entire sexual identity right now just because you're attracted to one guy. Marcus twisted to look up at me. One guy who happens to be amazing and patient and exactly what I didn't know I was looking for. My heart did that fluttering thing it had been doing a lot lately. Flatterer. It's not flattery if it's true. We were taking things slowly physically, letting Marcus set the pace as he navigated this new aspect of himself. Some nights we just kissed and cuddled, talking until the early hours about everything and nothing. Other nights, passion would overtake us, and we'd explore each other with increasing confidence and familiarity. Marcus was a generous and attentive lover, approaching intimacy with the same thoughtful curiosity he brought to everything else. He paid attention to what I liked, what made me gasp or arch into his touch, and he wasn't afraid to ask for what he wanted in return. I love how you respond to me, he murmured one night, lips pressed against my throat. I love that I can make you feel good. You make me feel incredible. I managed, my hands fisted in his hair. Good, Marcus said, pulling back to look at me with those intense green eyes. Because you make me feel like I'm discovering parts of myself I never knew existed. It wasn't all smooth sailing. Marcus had moments of doubt, times when the magnitude of what he was exploring would hit him and he'd withdraw, need space to process. I learned to recognize the signs, the way his shoulders would tense, how he'd get quiet and distant. I'm not running away, he assured me during one of these episodes, when I'd found him sitting on our fire escape in the middle of February, staring out at the city. I just need to think sometimes. About what? I asked, settling beside him despite the cold. About how much my life has changed, Marcus said. 3 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was. I was straight. I was going to marry some nice woman eventually, have kids, live a completely conventional life. And now I'm in love with my male roommate, and I've never been happier or more confused in my life. My heart stopped. You're in love with me? Marcus turned to look at me, and there was something vulnerable and brave in his expression. Yeah, I am. Is that okay? More than okay, I said, reaching for his hand. Because I'm in love with you too. We kissed there on the fire escape, cold wind whipping around us, and I thought about how strange and wonderful it was that love could sneak up on you like this, could reshape everything you thought you knew about yourself and your future. So what does this mean? Marcus asked when we finally broke apart. For us, I mean. It means we stop pretending this is just a casual thing, I said. It means we're boyfriends, if you want to be. Boyfriends, Marcus repeated, testing the word. I've never had a boyfriend before. I've never had one either, I reminded him. We'll figure it out together. Marcus smiled, and it was radiant. I like the sound of that. Boyfriends. Spring came early that year, and with it, new challenges. Marcus wanted to tell people about us, starting with his family and close friends. It was a big step, one that would make this relationship real in a way that our private bubble couldn't. What if they don't understand? Marcus asked the night before he planned to call his parents. What if they think this is just a phase or that you somehow turn me gay? Then they don't know you very well, I said firmly. You're not someone who does anything halfway, Marcus. If you say you love me, if you say this is real, then it is. But what if? I cut him off with a kiss. What if they surprise you? What if they care more about your happiness than their expectations? Marcus's parents were, in fact, surprised but ultimately supportive. His mother cried a little, but she assured him it was because she was happy he'd found someone who made him smile the way I did. His father was quieter but came around after a long conversation about love and acceptance. His friends were a mixed bag. Some were completely supportive, others needed time to adjust, and a few couldn't handle it at all. Marcus grieved those lost friendships, but he didn't waver in his commitment to us. I'm not going back in the closet for anyone, he told me after a particularly difficult conversation with a college friend who'd basically told him he was disgusting. This is who I am now. This is who I want to be. My own coming out process had been gradual and mostly positive, but watching Marcus navigate his was both heartbreaking and inspiring. He approached it with the same thoughtful determination he brought to everything else, and his courage made me love him even more. We had our first real fight in May about something stupid, whose turn it was to buy groceries, but it escalated into something bigger about communication and expectations. Marcus stormed out, and I was left wondering if we were too new, too fragile to survive real conflict. He came back 3 hours later with flowers and an apology. I'm sorry, he said, standing in our doorway looking miserable. I'm still learning how to do this, how to be in a relationship with someone I care about this much. I've never fought with someone and been terrified they might leave. I'm not going anywhere, I assured him, pulling him inside. But we need to learn how to fight better, how to disagree without it feeling like the end of the world. Agreed, Marcus said, wrapping his arms around me. I love you too much to let my inexperience ruin this. We talked it out, established some ground rules for future disagreements, and made up thoroughly. The fight had been scary, but surviving it made us stronger. Summer brought new adventures. Marcus had never been to Pride before, and he was nervous but excited about going with me. We spent hours talking about what it might be like, what he might feel seeing so many people living openly and proudly. What if I don't belong there? He asked as we got ready that morning. What if people can tell I'm new to this? Everyone's new to it at some point, I reminded him. And you belong there because you're part of this community now. Because you're with me. Pride was overwhelming in the best possible way. Marcus held my hand as we walked through the crowds, his eyes wide as he took in the celebration around us. When we stopped to watch the parade, he wrapped his arms around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. Thank you, he murmured in my ear. For what? For showing me this world. For being patient while I figured out how to be part of it. I leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest against my back. Thank you for being brave enough to explore it with me. That night, as we lay in bed exhausted but exhilarated, Marcus traced lazy patterns on my chest. I keep thinking about something someone said today, he said quietly. About how love is love, regardless of gender. About how the heart wants what it wants. What about it? I spent so many years thinking attraction was binary, that you were either straight or gay, and that was it. But being with you has taught me that it's so much more complicated and beautiful than that. How so? Marcus propped himself up on his elbow to look at me. I don't think I'm gay exactly. I'm still attracted to women sometimes. But I'm not straight either, because I'm head over heels in love with you. I think I'm just Marcus. And Marcus loves Jake. I love that, I said, pulling him down for a kiss. I love you. I love you too, he replied against my lips. More than I ever thought possible. As summer turned to fall, we started talking about the future in concrete terms. Our lease was up in December, and we needed to decide whether to renew or find a new place together. I want to find somewhere that's ours, Marcus said one evening as we browsed apartment listings online. Not just a place where we happen to live together, but a home we choose together. That sounds perfect, I agreed, bookmarking a listing for a 2-bedroom in a neighborhood we both loved. Our first place as a real couple. Our first place as boyfriends who are completely, stupidly in love with each other, Marcus corrected with a grin. We found the perfect apartment in November. A sunny two-bedroom with hardwood floors and a kitchen big enough for both of us to cook in without getting in each other's way. The day we signed the lease, Marcus kissed me right there in the rental office, not caring who saw. "Here's to new beginnings," he said, his forehead pressed against mine. "Here's to us," I replied. Moving day was chaotic but fun. Marcus's parents came to help, and it was surreal but wonderful watching his mother fuss over our kitchen organization while his father helped me set up our entertainment center. They treated me like family, like someone who belonged in their son's life, and it meant more than I could express. "You make him happy," Marcus's mother told me as we unpacked books together. "I haven't seen him smile this much since he was a little boy." "He makes me happy too," I said. "Happier than I ever thought I could be." "Good," she said firmly. "That's how it should be." That first night in our new place, we ordered pizza and sat on the floor of our empty living room, surrounded by boxes and planning where everything would go. "I can't believe we live together," Marcus said, leaning against me. "Like, really live together. As a couple." "Believe it," I said, kissing the top of his head. "This is real. We're real." "Sometimes I still can't believe how much my life has changed," Marcus mused. "A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be living with my boyfriend, planning a future with another man, I would have thought they were crazy." "Any regrets?" Marcus turned to look at me, his green eyes serious. "Not a single one. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me, Jake. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Even though it meant questioning everything you thought you knew about yourself." "Especially because of that," Marcus said firmly. "I was living such a small life before, following a script I'd never really chosen. Being with you has taught me that it's okay to write your own story, even if it's not what you expected." We christened our new bedroom that night, making love slowly and thoroughly in our own space, in our own bed. Afterward, as we lay tangled together, Marcus traced the line of my jaw with his fingertip. "I love you, Jake," he said softly. "I love the man I am when I'm with you. I love the future we're building together. I love you too," I replied, meaning it with every fiber of my being. More than I ever thought I could love anyone. Winter settled over the city again, but this time, when the temperature dropped and the wind howled outside our windows, we didn't need any excuses to end up in the same bed. We belonged there together, had earned our place in each other's arms through honesty and courage and the kind of love that changes everything. One particularly cold night in January, almost exactly a year after that first time Marcus had climbed into my bed seeking warmth, I woke to find him watching me sleep. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, my voice rough with sleep. "Just remembering," Marcus said, his hand finding mine under the covers. "This time last year, I was so confused and scared and trying so hard to pretend I didn't want to be exactly where I am right now. And now I can't imagine being anywhere else," Marcus said, leaning down to kiss me softly. "Thank you for being patient with me while I figured it out." "Thank you for being brave enough to figure it out at all," I replied. "Not everyone would have." "I almost didn't," Marcus admitted. "There were so many times I wanted to run, to go back to pretending I was someone I wasn't. But then I'd look at you, and I'd remember what it felt like to be truly happy for the first time in my life." "What changed your mind? What made you stay?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering. "I realized that being scared of who I might be was nothing compared to being scared of losing you. And once I stopped fighting it, once I let myself feel everything I was feeling, it wasn't scary anymore. It was just right." I pulled him closer, marveling at how perfectly he fit against me, how natural this had become. "I'm so glad you stayed. I'm so glad you let me," Marcus replied. "I'm so glad you saw something in me worth waiting for." "I saw someone worth loving," I said simply. "Someone brave and beautiful and real." Marcus kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Outside, the wind rattled our windows and snow began to fall, but inside our warm apartment, in our shared bed, we were exactly where we belonged. "Jake," Marcus murmured against my lips. "Yeah, I'm not cold anymore." I laughed, remembering all those nights when cold had been his excuse to seek the warmth of my bed, my arms, my heart. No, Marcus said, his smile radiant even in the dim light. "I haven't been cold since the night you first let me stay." "Good," I said, pulling him closer. Because I plan on keeping you warm for a very long time. Promise? Marcus asked, echoing that first vulnerable question he'd asked all those months ago. Promise, I replied, just as I had then. But now with the weight of certainty and love and a future stretching out before us. Marcus settled against me with a contented sigh, and as I listened to his breathing even out as he drifted back to sleep, I thought about how sometimes the most profound changes in our lives come disguised as the simplest things. A broken heater, a cold night, a roommate seeking warmth. Sometimes love sneaks up on you like that, wearing the mask of necessity or convenience or friendship. Sometimes it takes root in the spaces between what you thought you wanted and what you actually need. Sometimes it asks you to question everything you thought you knew about yourself, and then rewards your courage with a happiness you never imagined possible. Marcus stirred in his sleep, his arm tightening around me, and I pressed a kiss to the top of his head. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, new opportunities to choose love over fear. But tonight, in our warm bed in our shared home, we were simply two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way and decided to build something beautiful together. The heating system hummed quietly in the background, working perfectly, keeping our apartment comfortable and warm. But even if it broke again, even if we woke up to chattering teeth and frozen pipes, I knew Marcus wouldn't need an excuse anymore to end up in my arms. He was here because he wanted to be, because he'd chosen this life, this love, this version of himself that he'd discovered in the space between friendship and something deeper. And as sleep claimed me again, I smiled into the darkness, grateful for broken heaters and cold Chicago nights, and the beautiful, complicated man sleeping peacefully beside me. Grateful for the kind of love that transforms everything it touches, that makes you braver and truer and more yourself than you ever thought possible. In the morning, we'd wake up together as we had so many times before, but also as we would so many times in the future. We'd make coffee and breakfast, steal kisses in the kitchen, plan our day around the simple joy of being together. We'd continue writing our story, one ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. But for now, we slept, warm and safe and completely, utterly home.